Let's talk about PakMMA and let's talk about Pakistani combat sports. Thodi der ho gayi hai since we've done one of these breakdowns, and for good reason. A lot was happening in PakMMA and Pakistani combat sports when we last spoke, and since then a lot has stopped, but there is a lot coming along the way as well. We're going to talk to you about a lot of things in this video. Amir Khan, AK Promotions, Usman Wazeer, Flogger Series, Shaheen Fight Night, Mehmosh Raza, Shoaib the Assassin Yousaf, Ahmed Mujtaba, Abbas Khan, so much stuff. Please stay tuned till the end of the video. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, like this wherever you're watching it, so on, so forth. You know what to do. Let's get on with it. What has PakMMA looked like and Pakistani combat sports looked like through the pandemic? That's what I want to talk to you about right now. The overall assessment though is a positive one. Everything looks on the up, and rightfully so. There's been so much work being put in right now on the ground in these events and in different parts of the country to make the entire scene grow. I'm going to talk to you about all of that. What was the scene looking like before the third wave, so to speak, came around? Kya ho raha tha PakMMA mein on the ground? Let me tell you a few indicators, a few positive ones. I have it on good authority, very good authority, that at least 2 MMA promotions were being launched on 2 major television networks. I can't tell you more than that right now. I will eventually, don't worry about it. But this is the upside, that we had 2 of them, not 1, but 2 of them just for MMA. And boxing itself, wo jo kar baithi in the last couple of months throughout the pandemic, uske baare mein hum actually baat karte hain by starting off with the first thing I want to talk to you about, which is AK Promotions. The entire year for Amir Khan Promotions on the ground for the first time in Pakistan ever. The first ever international AK Promotions took place on the 3rd of October during the pandemic. Very, very interesting stuff. And it was contested for the ABF Welterweight Championship of the World in the main event when Usman Wazeer took on Boyeda, the Bulldozer Semanjuntak. I was there. It was an amazing night of boxing. But something happened that night. What happened exactly is, anyone's guess, and it's a story which, we're going to be unfolding as time goes on the mic. But something happened and we had a split at the scenes. Amir Khan went his own way, Usman Wazeer went his own way. It's public information now. It's okay, guys. Don't worry. It's not a big deal. They put on, and the reason it's not a big deal is because nobody's being private about it at all. The second most important thing that happened in the pandemic was 19th December 2020. The interesting thing about that date is where normally we wouldn't get 1 boxing event of a high level in the country. We had 2 happening on the same night. Now that is a tragedy. And I think that's something that I wanted to highlight for a very long time now. That should not happen in Pakistani combat sports ever. We should never, and I mean ever have 2 events happening on the same day, especially of that magnitude, especially with that magnitude of coverage. We had an event in Lahore being broadcast by PTV Sports, and we had an event in Karachi being broadcast on Jio Super. That should never happen. And whose fault it is doesn't matter, but it happened. Who didn't move their date or who got there first is anyone's guess. I can tell you one thing, you know where my loyalties are, but it is what it is. It happened. It's unfortunate. That should never happen. But is that a positive sign in a way? Of course it is. 2 major events in the same day in 2 different cities on 2 different major television networks. We had the ABF Welterweight Championship of the World defended that night when Usman Wazeer defeated Carlos B.S. Lopez. We had a title eliminator, a world title eliminator between Muhammad the Falcon Wasim and Jenny Boy Boca. Also on that same night, we had the WBC Middle East Champion of the World being crowned for the first time when Nadir the Hulk Baloch came out victorious over Jawad Little Wolf. Now, that's incredible for one night. I wish it was spread out. But these 3 things, to focus on the positive, these 3 things are very good indicators for how PakMMA and Pak Combat Sports has performed throughout the pandemic. What's the second thing I'm going to talk to you about? Any guesses? Any guesses? Any guesses? Flogger Series! Of course we're going to talk to you about Flogger Series. Flogger Series, the reason we started calling them the savior of PakMMA a year ago during the pandemic was because when nobody else, and I mean nobody else, was putting out any kind of a show, when nobody else could put on any kind of a show, somehow in some way Flogger Series was able to put on show after show after show. I have some incredible insight for you guys when it comes to Flogger Series. But before that, let me just give you a quick highlight. 3 Contender Series cards and 2 flagship Flogger Series shows during the pandemic. October 18th, Flogger Series 5, Ismail Khan versus Ayub Khan. December 12th, Flogger Series 6, SAG MMA with Abdullah Zadran versus Nematullah Khan. And apart from these 5, here's the insider, right? It's amazing that they were able to put on 5 big events where boys got their fights and got to get their records one way or the other, where guys were able to finally put their training to use and get inside a competitive element. Finally, these guys got their fights when the world was stuck. That's incredible in itself. But here's the most interesting thing. Apart from these 5 events, Nasir Khan told me that there was an event every month with nobody even knowing. Ye events bilkul document bhi nahi hue. Nobody knows about them. There's no record. Nothing, no footage. No phones were allowed. Nobody was allowed inside with a phone. That's the level that Flogger Series is operating on, just so guys can get fights. If you want to understand whether PakMMA is growing, you can understand it is growing because there's a need being felt by people like Nasir Khan of Flogger Series to realize that we need fights, more and more and more and more fights. And he had given people during the COVID period over 70 to 100 undocumented fights across 7 to 8 undocumented fight cards. This was fighters in Islamabad, in Pindi, in KPK, and in Jhelum. What the hell? That's nuts. Just the fact that this happened alone is incredible enough. Hats off. Flogger Series is one of those brilliant organizations that not only survived but thrived through the pandemic. The next characters I have to talk to you about when it comes to the pandemic is Shaheen MMA Management. February 29th, 2020 was the last pre-event pandemic card of PakMMA. That was Lions Fighting Championship 2, which they hosted alongside the Lions Fighting Den, Tera Ismail Khan. The main event, Naik Muhammad versus Atif Khan. Now, this is important. I'll come back to it later why. But Naik Muhammad versus Atif Khan. Atif Khan loses in surprising manner after landing double-digit takedowns in the first couple of rounds. He gets finished somehow. Very interesting footage. We'll get back to that later. Haider Satti was on that card. Zishan Shah was on the card. Samir Jatt was on the card. And many more people were on the card. This was the pre-pandemic card after which we were launched into an era where we wouldn't understand what the certainty and uncertainty of anything would be. हमें कुछ भी नहीं पता था कि कल एक event होगा या नहीं. हमें कुछ भी नहीं पता था कि कल fights मिलेंगी हमारे fighters को या नहीं. हमें कुछ भी नहीं पता था whether MMA would even grow moving forward. But then we come to February 13th, 2021. Shaheen Fight Night. Almost exactly a year from the last pre-pandemic event, we come to Shaheen Fight Night, our coming out party in a way. We finally got to be involved directly in an event like I always dreamed for us to be. It was absolutely breathtaking to get to be involved in something like this. Shout out Umar Fassi for having a backache after all of that, editing 12 fights, being there on the day, running around the ring, all of that. I had a blast doing everything I normally do and some. Muzammil and Rehan are such fun guys to work with. But our vision with that event was essentially to bring and produce a amateur fight league to Lahore where it hasn't been, the likes of which hadn't been seen before. Mainly because there was a gap in Lahori Pakistani MMA, the Fighting Alliance and Pak Fight Championship, PFC and all of those other events stopped. लाहौर के अंदर बहुत देर के लिए उसके फाइटर्स को एक प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं मिला for them to get fights and improve to the next level, and that's where Shaheen Fight Night comes in. We will be bringing to you more fights, but a year almost after, we're able to put something together again like LFC2, and people in the Lahore area and whoever's affiliated to Shaheen MMA Management will definitely be getting more and more fights. March 27th, 2021, another very interesting date. Remember how I talked to you about Atif Khan versus Naik Muhammad, LFC2? Yeah. Atif Khan was in the main event of KCFL Season 3, where he was headlining the card against Amanullah Boulder Maiman. And Atif Khan, almost a year and some after his surprising defeat to Naik Muhammad, bounced back in brilliant fashion. Atif's story kind of reminded me of what we were saying, which is why I wanted to highlight it. Atif's story reminded me of PakMMA through the pandemic. We got slapped across the face straight up when it first hit us. Nobody had any idea what to do, but by the end of this, whole year, which was 2020, all of the uncertainty that came with it, at the end, Atif Khan was able to redeem and reclimb to the position where he was supposed to be, a belt holder in his professional career in Pakistan, moving on to bigger and better things. I'm so incredibly happy for him, and I'm so incredibly happy for all of us. क्योंकि इस सब में, of course, बहुत लोग जीते हैं और बहुत लोग हारे हैं in PakMMA. Naturally, there's always going to be a winner, there's always going to be a loser. Even during this pandemic, there have been teams that haven't been able to adjust themselves, and there will be teams that were able to adjust too well. But nonetheless, the big winner here is, as cheesy as it sounds, as generic as that sounds, all of us. Mainly because of the amount of growth that has come our way and the amount of activity. The amount of... पहली चीज़ मैंने आपको इस वीडियो में क्या बताई थी? That little insider thing there about 2 different MMA leagues starting on major network television. This is unprecedented stuff. ये बातें normally हर साल PakMMA में to my knowledge नहीं होती. There are no rumors or plans to this degree. तो हमें realize करना चाहिए that our scene is growing very, very much. And we should be very, very proud of it. The last thing I want to talk to you about, and this is something which we've covered over the year, through our podcast, through our coverage, through our interviews, but internationally, in PakMMA, this has been one of the best years that we have had as a country. Not just because of wins or losses, of course they matter to a very large degree, but to a nascent MMA economy, what's more important is not just wins or losses, but the amount of fights that our fighters are getting. Let me tell you why. It's mainly because output is equal to views, which is equal to recognition. If you have fighters fighting from your country and becomes more of a normal practice, then your country is accepted as a global MMA commodity. Each fighter is viewed a little differently. Bashir Ahmad, when he first stepped in to one championship, just a guy out of Pakistan with an incredible story. It was a completely different expectation to what our fighters today at the highest level get, both Ahmed Mujtaba and Mehmosh get. I'm not saying their treatment by these big organizations is like 100% great. Don't get me started on that. Please don't. But what I'm trying to say is that over time, जितने हमारे fighters लड़ेंगे, उतनी ही हमारी identity build होगी, जिससे हम लोग फिर इन organizations में कुछ worth रख सकेंगे, ज़्यादा worth रख सकेंगे, and more importantly, our fighters can get paid more so that they can be more reinvested into the overall MMA economy of the country. Now, with this year, I did not expect for our fighters to get a lot of fights, but they did. And there was a lot of incredible, gutsy, heartfelt performances right off the top of my head. Uloomi Shaheen, Zia Mashwani, absolutely brilliant performances, showing so much heart and so much determination to get the win. And those are things that should not leave our mind or should not go over our head. But if we look at the wins that we've got this year as a country, let's start October 1st, 2020. Mehmosh Raza versus Callum Murray. I have sang this man's song for very long, but I'll do it one more time just to cap off the year. He took down a 10th planet black belt, a Taekwondo world champion. He stood with him for 3 rounds. He decisively beat Callum Murray, a guy who's coming off of a win in Bellator. That's big. That's massive, because a win off of Bellator means you get a bigger fight in Bellator, right? But the way the MMA hierarchy of the world exists, fighting in the US is automatically considered more value, more exposure, more TV time, more fans, more money. Brave is still, it's a multi-million, I don't know, maybe $billion enterprise which is running MMA in the Middle East and Asia. It comes a little lower in the pecking order. A guy getting a win in Bellator means he should be fighting maybe in the UFC next. Mehmosh Raza beat him. I'm just saying. That's a massive win for us. Next up, February 5th, 2021, the right check, hook, or overhand, whichever it was, that shook up the world. It's disputed. That's why I said I saw it. Everybody saw it. From Shoaib Akhtar to Wasim Akram to all of Pakistan saw Ahmed Mujtaba knock out Rahul Raju. on Kashmir Day. That was one of the craziest things that I've ever seen as an MMA fan in Pakistan. That knockout alone cemented us as a problem, cemented Ahmed Mujtaba as a problem in one championship, and it was one of those things which you have to see it to believe it. So go see it. It's insane. Which brings me to March 18th, 2021. Muhammad Abbas Khan versus Umar Al-Dafrawi. My God, my heart has never raced faster in a fight. I love Muhammad Abbas Khan to death. He's one of the sweetest, nicest, easiest to talk to people that I've come across in any MMA. Pakistani or German or Turkish or Russian. He's just the nicest guy in the world. Muhammad Abbas Khan told me in his interview that he was coming off of, a great amateur career and not a great professional debut, and he wanted to rectify that and show everybody his skill level. And my God, did he show us his skill level. He was able to mix up everything perfectly, beautifully. The strikes, the takedowns, the transitions, the movement, just the fact that he was able to cancel everything Umar Al-Dafrawi wanted to throw his way. It was one of the best performances I have seen from a Pakistani fighter on a big international stage, like he got it done at Arabian Nights, Brave CF. It was just absolutely incredible and a major win for us. And lastly, April Fool's Day 2021, that's April 1st, 2021, Shoaib the Assassin Yousaf versus Stephen Goncalves at Brave CF 50. Their legendary 50th card, our homeboy got a win. Shoaib the Assassin Yousaf repping the UK and Pakistan. This man has shown so much promise in his international and professional career. The last fight he lost to Muhammad Makaev, which is again not a bad person to lose to at all. He was on a 5-fight win streak across various promotions in the UK as well as Brave. He's one of those guys who's turning into the most active fighters in Pakistani MMA at just 25 years old, 8-2 record, and very impressive wins on his resume. He's on the fast track to be one of the regulars representing Pakistan in Brave CF, and his win kind of capped off perfectly the year for PakMMA, and here's why. What I've learned throughout this year, my first year covering PakMMA, and just generally PakMMA through the pandemic, what I've learned is that fighters alone will not take us to the next level. Teams will not take us to the next level. It will not be coaches, or it will not be big corporations. It will be processes. It will be ways that we implement and we can carry forward as a community of people interested in the same thing. What can take us to the next level is if we all understand that there are certain things that always need to be done in a very regulated and standardized way, and everything else that comes forward, the results, the decisions, the fights, the way they go, those are up to just who's worked harder and just who has it on the night. I think we're starting to figure out how to run PakMMA, how to have events on the reg, and how to make sure that we can have them run systematically without any kind of negative repercussions. This has been my year-end recap in a way. There's been a lot more happening as well, obviously, that we can't cover in 1 or 4 or 5 videos, but this has been an incredible year for PakMMA, comparing ourselves to where we were exactly a year ago to now. And I just have to say that moving forward, as things get better, as things keep moving forward, you can only and you should only expect big and bigger things. Thank you